I'm Cal Dietz, and in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on the single most powerful, yet almost universally misunderstood moment in athletic movement. We're talking about that invisible power switch, the one that turns stored energy into raw, explosive power. And let me tell you, if you can master this, you can unlock an athlete's absolute highest potential. So let's just jump right in with a question, one that really gets to the heart of a huge misconception in strength and conditioning. Because if you can truly grasp the answer to this, you're going to change the way you train athletes forever. You know, when I say isometric, most of us get flashbacks to being a kid doing punishment wall sits in gym class, right? We were taught that it's static, it's about not moving. But here's the thing. In the world of athletics, that's completely wrong. It's the exact opposite of static. The isometric phase is this lightning-fast energy transfer station. It's the hardest possible stop that takes all that force you absorb on the way down and channels it into an explosive action on the way up. It's a powerful, and most importantly, a trainable contraction. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to define what that instant really is. Then, we'll dive deep into the two big neurological drivers behind isometric power. I'm also going to share a theory I have on what I think is the real mechanical weak link in this whole process. And then we'll tie it all together and see how it applies on the field. My goal is that by the end of this, you'll have a rock-solid understanding of why this phase is so important and how you can train it to make your athletes just better. All right, first things first, we got to get our language right. The word isometric itself gives us a clue, but honestly, in the context of a jump or a cut, it's actually kind of misleading. So yeah, the textbook definition is pretty simple. Iso means same, metric means distance, same distance. But here's where everybody gets tripped up. While the joint angle might not be changing for a millisecond, the muscle itself is going absolutely berserk. It's contracting with everything it has to slam on the brakes and reverse momentum. That's why we have to think of it as a dynamic contraction, not a static hold, because a contraction is something we can make faster and stronger. So how do we improve this contraction? Well, it all comes down to training the nervous system. There are two big levers we can pull. The first is motor unit recruitment, basically getting more muscle fibers to show up to the party. The second is rate coding, making those fibers fire way, way faster. And listen, this part is absolutely crucial. Research from way back in '98 by Gordon and his team showed these are separate skills. You can't just do slow negatives, the eccentric phase, and expect to get better at this isometric stop. You have to train all three phases of movement specifically. Okay, let's dig into that first piece, recruitment. How do we get more fibers into the game to create that powerful stop? It all comes down to a fundamental rule called the size principle. Your body is smart, it's efficient, it's not going to waste energy by calling in the big guns for a small job. So for everyday stuff, it just uses the small, slow twitch fibers. But when you suddenly have to absorb a massive force, like landing from a jump, that's the emergency signal. The nervous system screams for backup, and it starts recruiting the biggest, baddest motor neurons we have, the ones that control our powerful, fast-twitch type 2 fibers. I love this analogy because it just makes so much sense. You know that strongman game at the carnival, right, where you hit the base with a sledgehammer? Well, think of the eccentric force coming down as that sledgehammer. A weak isometric contraction is like a little tap, maybe one or two lights turn on. But a powerful, well-trained isometric contraction, that's you swinging that hammer with everything you've got. You smash that base and bam, all the lights shoot up the tower. You've recruited every possible motor unit for an explosive reversal of force. All right, so we've got all the fibers to the party. That's step one. But that's only half the battle. Now we need to get them to fire, and fire fast. And that, my friends, is rate coding. This is so cool. A nerve can't send a stronger signal. It's an all or nothing deal. It's either on or off. So if the nervous system needs more force and it needs it now, it can't just turn up the volume. Instead, it starts talking faster. It sends a machine gun burst of signals, one after another, to the muscle fibers. The signal doesn't get stronger, just way, way faster. And this table shows you exactly what's happening. One little nerve signal, a single twitch. It barely moves the needle in tension. But when those signals start arriving one on top of the other, they build, they summate. The tension level just keeps climbing until, at a high enough frequency, the muscle hits a state called tetanus. And tetanus, that's the holy grail. That's maximal force production. That's exactly what we're chasing in our training. Okay, we've covered the two big neurological factors. Now I want to bring in a third component, something I believe is the missing link here. And fair warning, you're not going to find this in your standard exercise physiology textbook. And look, I want to be totally transparent here. What I'm about to tell you is a working theory. I call it rate coupling. It's based on decades of observation in the trenches with athletes, not a stack of peer-reviewed papers. I have this strong belief that beyond the neural signal, the actual biochemical efficiency of the muscle contraction itself is a trainable quality, the speed of that mechanical connection inside the muscle fiber. I think that's often the real bottleneck, the weakest link in an athlete's power. I mean, just think about what has to happen for a single muscle twitch. It's this insanely complex 10-step chemical ballet. You've got the nerve signal, acetylcholine getting released, calcium ions flooding the area, all of this just so the little myosin heads can physically grab onto the actin filaments and pull. It's incredible. And here is the absolute kicker. That entire 10-step cascade, in a real athletic movement like a cut or a jump, it has to happen in less than 1/100th of a second. That's just staggering. If any single step in that chain is slow or inefficient, poof, power is lost. It just dissipates as heat. And that's why I'm so convinced that this rate coupling, the speed of that chemical reaction, is a trainable quality we can't afford to ignore.
So, okay, that's a lot of science. What does this actually look like on the court or in the weight room? Well, it all boils down to one thing: creating a better braking system. Because a better braking system is what gives you a higher rate of force development, or RFD. And RFD is the name of the game in explosive sports.
I want you to picture this. If you try to bounce a basketball on sand, what happens? It just kind of dies, right? The sand gives way, absorbs all the energy. That's an athlete with a weak, undertrained isometric phase. Now, take that same ball and slam it down on concrete. Bam! It rockets right back up to your hand. That concrete is a highly trained isometric phase. It provides that hard, instantaneous stop that allows for a near-perfect transfer of energy. And we can actually see this difference with force plates. An underdeveloped athlete, their force time curve has this wide, rounded, kind of lazy U shape at the bottom. That's the sand. That's energy leaking out during a slow transition. But a highly developed athlete, you see a sharp, aggressive, narrow V shape. That's the concrete. It shows a rapid, brutal stop and an immediate, explosive concentric action. That's what a high rate of force development looks like. All right, let's bring it all home. Let's summarize the most critical points from all this so you can start putting it into practice right away. If you walk away remembering only 5 things, make it these. Number 1, it is a contraction, not a static hold. Burn that into your brain. 2, you have to train the nerves. It's all about recruitment and rate coding. 3, remember my weak link theory. The mechanical efficiency, that rate coupling, matters. 4, the goal of your training should be to create a hard stop. Think concrete, not sand. And finally, number 5, you must train all 3 phases of movement, eccentric, isometric, and concentric, as separate skills. All right, pop quiz time. Let's see what's stuck. What are the 2 main neurological processes we have to train to get the most out of that isometric phase? I'll give you a second. Got it? It's motor unit recruitment, getting more fibers in the game, and rate coding, making them fire faster. Okay, second question. You're looking at a force time curve, and you see that sharp, narrow V at the bottom. What does that immediately tell you about that athlete's isometric ability? It tells you they have a world-class hard stop. It's a signature of incredibly efficient energy transfer and a very, very high rate of force development. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. You understand the why now, but the real challenge is what you're going to do with it. Are you programming for this phase? Are you coaching it with the same intent and precision that you give the eccentric and concentric portions of a lift? Because answering that question, and more importantly, acting on it, well, that's what separates the good coaches from the great ones.